All right, this is lecture number 15, Pathwork. Happy holidays, everybody. I hope it was fantastic. It's called Influence Between the Spiritual World and the Material World. Greetings in the name of the Lord. I bring you blessings. I bring you love, my friends. Although we have had a few mechanical disturbances, I ask all of you to forget about it now, for there will be no further disturbance for this coming hour, which is in benediction of the divine forces. And I greet all of my old friends as well as my new friends who have found their way here for the first time. You are all welcome. And even though this happening may be new and strange for some of you, I beg you, open your minds. Many things are possible of which you human beings, many things are Many things are possible of which you human beings so far have no knowledge. Many more things humanity will see in the next decades to come. And I also greet my old friends who are not present here tonight, also those far away over the waters. All who read my words should know they are not forgotten. And I wish to speak tonight about the influence between the spiritual worlds and the material world. Much has been said of the influence of the world of spirit on the world of matter, but not much has been said about the influence the other way around. For both affect one another. First of all, I will discuss the influence of spirit on your earthly sphere. Spiritual spheres are all over the universe, the planets, the different stellar systems, even in the space in between. But even right on your earthly sphere, you have all kinds of spiritual spheres, just the same in the whole scale from the lowest to the highest. For distance in the world of spirit is not measured by your geographical measurements. Therefore, it is possible that many spheres exist on the same geographical or material spot. They overlap one another. Thus, it is possible that one human person can live on Earth and can be in this room, for instance, and yet be connected with a particular spiritual sphere, while another person in the same room can be connected with another sphere of quite a different level. And I realize, my friends, that this is extremely difficult for you to imagine, for distance is for you a question of space, and yet, in absolute reality, it is not so. Thus, one person can be in contact with a sphere according to this person's general and overall spiritual development. But since no one on earth is harmoniously developed, if you were, you would not have to live here. You may be at one time in contact with one spiritual sphere, and when another mood strikes you, the currents coming out of your soul, your subconscious, and your conscious mind will connect you with quite a different sphere. And again, a third at another opportunity, and so on, and so on, and so on. I have explained to you about the higher self, the lower self, the mask self. The first two each living human being has. The third, the mask self, I may say 90% of humanity has more or less. It is only a question of degree. For those of you who are here tonight the first time, it might be advantageous to read up on my last lecture so that this lecture can be fully understood. Now, whatever the higher self has been redeveloped into, its original state of shedding the surrounding layers constituting the lower self, it reaches out and automatically connects with the highest, most radiant spheres, even though you still live on Earth, right here, and even though measured by distance, these very radiant spheres are hundreds of thousands of miles away. And wherever the lower self is still stronger and does not permit to let the higher self shine through, the connection is made with the forces of darkness according to the personal attitude and development. In other words, one person's lower self may be lower than another's. And since each sphere is richly populated by spirits fitting into this particular sphere, you are all constantly in touch with spirits of various spiritual development, as well as with forces and currents generating from this particular sphere. Some people say that when their lower self takes over, an evil spirit is responsible, meaning that they are not to blame. But this is not true. Certainly, evil spirits can and do influence you, but only if and when you permit it, by your laziness in spiritual development, through your inclination to take the line of least resistance. And often you think merely because your faults are not as bad as those of certain people of very low development, a criminal, let us say, you think it does not matter so much. Even if your faults are only minor ones, not crimes or outright recognized sins, all the more so to perfect yourselves. The more you are free of very wicked and evil trends within you, the higher your development evidently is. And therefore, you possess more enlightenment, more strength, and thus more can be expected of you. A so-called minor fault with you may weigh every bit as strongly as a crime with a person of little or no spiritual enlightenment. Therefore, do not compare your faults and deviations from spiritual law with just anybody. Your comparison may be all wrong, for you cannot possibly judge where you stand compared to any other person. And I am saying this because it is often the case that people thus make allowances for themselves, either by saying or thinking, I am not the only one who does that. Other people are doing worse. Or putting the blame on evil spirits whose influence on them they like to think is merely a question of coincidence.